In our last show, we interviewed Noreen Khan, previously Chief Executive of the CCMA, on the issue of bargaining council extensions of agreements to cover non-parties. Joining me now is Mr. Thembinkosi Mkalipi, the Chief Director of Labour Relations of the Department of Labour, who is one of the people who advises the Minister on whether agreements should be extended or not. Welcome, Mr. Mkalipi.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers.
It's fantastic having you here. So, Section 32 of the Labour Relations Act makes allowance for the extension of bargaining council agreements to cover specifically non-parties. What are the conditions? Under which conditions would you agree that that should happen?
Well, in terms of the law, there are about two conditions. One, if the parties to the bargaining council represent the majority of parties in the sector, that is, employer organization have got companies, employer organization as members of companies, as members of their organization.
Majority being 51%.
51 plus 1%. And if trade unions represent the majority, they then can ask the minister, and then the minister doesn't have a discretion.
Doesn't have a discretion.
If they've got a majority, the minister doesn't have discretion. The law says the minister must extend the agreement.
And if they don't have 51%?
Now, let us say, if trade unions, and then there's other issues that have been introduced in the law, the last amendment, where it says that if any of the parties, for example, if the employer remember the representativity of employers is not judged by the membership of employer organization, is judged by the number of workers they employ in the sector.
Okay.
If they employ the majority in the sector, then they've got a majority. And now the law says, the change in the law says that if any of the parties, that is trade unions and employers, are representative, then the minister can extend. They don't have to be both of them.
So they don't have to both. So you can have 20% of the companies employing 80% of the people. And those 80% of the people who are members of the trade unions in the bargaining council, the trade unions can make the application.
And you can have a situation where the trade union represent, its members make up 20% of the workers in the sector. But employers employ 50% plus one.
Right.
Now, on the strength of the employer representativity, you can extend the agreement. Now, the Act goes further and says that then if parties it does not say they are not representative. It says if the parties are sufficiently representative. Now, they are not 50% per one, they are not majority, but they are sufficiently representative. The minister then has got the discretion whether to extend or not. And then the law goes further and say, what are the issues that the minister must take into consideration in whether to extend or not? Whether, if the minister doesn't extend, will that affect collective bargaining? Remember, the LRA is there to encourage and
to further the interests of collective bargaining.
Now, if any decision that the minister is going to take undermine the interests of collective bargaining, then the minister shouldn't take that decision.
Let me play devil's advocate and say to you, what about the interests of not having to affiliate or disassociate as far as the non-members are concerned, the companies that don't want to be part of the trade union movement or the employer movement?
Well, I mean, the law is, look at it differently. The law says, well, when the minister extends the agreement, you don't have to be members of the council, but you are bound by
once the agreement is extended.
Once the agreement is extended. Therefore, you've got the freedom of association whether to belong or not to belong. But you don't have a freedom of association whether to comply with the agreement or not to comply. Therefore, freedom of association is different because freedom of association deals whether does this force you to be a member of either the trade union or the employer organization, and the answer is no, it does not. But it then forces you if the minister extends, because then extension makes it a secondary law. It makes basically a law. And if and the other issue that come up is what can companies who are not members of bargaining council who are affected by this do. In terms of the law, before the minister extends, the minister must make sure that the council has got proper exemption processes.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
When it comes to exemption, that means that even though I'm covered by an extension of agreement, I must have an opportunity to prove certain things to the bargaining council and therefore be exempt from aspects of the agreement.
You must be able to go to the Bargaining Council and say, look, for this reason, exempt me from this. And the law is clear. It says that Bargaining Council must deal with that issue using an independent body.
So it can't be members of the Bargaining Council who are making the decisions?
That make that decision. Even if they make that decision, you've got to have a recourse where to go of an independent body. And the law is clear in that the decision whether to grant or not to grant must be done by an independent person or body.
Let's talk about the protection of those small businesses, the ethical protection of those small businesses. Is there any way, in any of the Bargaining Council agreements which have been extended that you've come across, where a voice is created for those non-parties? In other words, they are sucked into the Bargaining Council scope, they've got no choice, but is there a way of them being given a voice within that scope if they don't want to affiliate with the traditional Bargaining Council parties?
Well, a Bargaining Council is a society, it's a club.
Yes.
Now, if you want to influence the decision of a club, you've got to be a member of the club. And if small business, if you've got a big number of small business in a sector and they want to influence that decision, the best way is to come in and make their view in the club itself. Look at the Metal Bargaining Council. The Bargaining Council that is headed by Mr. Papenforce.
That's NIASA.
NIASA is not a organization of big business. It's part of the council. It has gone into the council and it's influencing decisions.
That's fantastic. That's what you're really saying is this. You don't have to join the existing associations. In numbers, as non-parties, you can go to a small business association and let it affiliate with the Bargaining Council.
That's what I'm saying. And then you exercise your rights within that structure.
And you can affect the rules and regulations.
If you've got numbers, you can affect the rules and regulations.
Thank you for being on the show, and I know we're going to be meeting again.